Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 351 of the All Dolphins podcast on this Thursday, September 5th, 2024. Pleased to be joined once again by Chris Perkins from the South Florida Sun Sentinel, sunsentinel.com, the Dolphins Deep Dive with Perk, very appropriately named. Perk, how are you?
I'm great, man. Poop. I'm more fired up every day, baby. We're getting closer to the opener.
Yes, and we have an NFL game that means something this evening with the Baltimore Ravens and the Kansas City Chiefs. Um, I guess before we talk Dolphins, and it's going to be a lot of talk about player availability, including Jaylen Ramsey and possible Ramsey ramifications. Can you imagine if they were playing the Rams? It would be Ramsey ramifications against the Rams.
Oh man, that's deep. That's
Yeah.
deep, man. We're starting off. We're starting off with good stuff. We're not even saving it.
Nope, we're right off the shoot. So before we address everything that went down in Dolphin Land on this Thursday, I guess since regular season is kicking off on Thursday night, we should do the obligatory who's your Super Bowl champion, who's your NFC champion, who's your AFC champion. Do you have an MVP, coach of the year, anything else you want to prognosticate?
I did. Let's see. I think I picked Baltimore as my Super Bowl champ. I think I picked Baltimore over San Francisco. I would have to go back and look, but that sounds right. With Derrick Henry, I love the potential for this Baltimore Ravens team. I think that was a huge missing piece of the puzzle. We do still have to see if Lamar Jackson can find some postseason accuracy in his throws. But having Derrick Henry, having that sledgehammer takes a lot of pressure off of Lamar. I don't have an MVP. I don't have the superlatives. But I guess. Do I want to go Mahomes? No, you go, and I'll.
And I was just saying, I agree with you.
Yeah, I haven't thought about MVP at all. That's an interesting question. What about Joe Burrow as comeback player of the year?
Absolutely, and he could be MVP, and
that's over Aaron Rodgers though as comeback player of the year.
Excellent point.
There we go.
No, and this is where who's going to be the MVP? Okay, well, a quarterback from a team that's going to be in the top four.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
That really narrows it down, right?
Right.
I think the number is staggering. Basically, the quarterback of one of the top two seeds in one of the conferences. I don't know the number, the streak. It's a little ridiculous. Yeah. I don't make predictions, so I'm not going to. So I'm just put you on the spot and to know. I like Baltimore too. I'm a little queasy, for lack of a better term, about their offensive line because they're replacing a lot of veteran guys. And I think above and beyond anything else, I just don't want to see the Chiefs there. And it's nothing personal. I don't want to see the Chiefs and I don't want to see the 49ers. Like, can we get some new blood in there, please?
See, you're one of those. You know what's interesting, Poop, is I love dynasties. I think dynasties define the game. They draw in the casual fan. It gives you somebody to love and hate. So if Kansas City wins again, I'm all for it.
No, and I agree. And if it's great when it's one of your teams, like I was a Showtime Lakers fan, and it was great. The 80s were great. But I can imagine being a fan of, like a dozen other teams in the Western Conference and be like, we have to watch the Lakers again in the finals. I mean, so.
Look, to your point, I'm not sure people were thrilled about watching the Spurs and Tim Duncan year after year after year.
And, of course, I say that and somebody wants to throw it in my face, go for it because it's fair. I was in Montreal in the 70s growing up as a teenager. They won the Stanley Cup 6 times in 10 years.
Yeah.
But now as an older gentleman, and I'm not a Chiefs fan, even though I highly respect what they're doing, I want to see somebody else. Plus, again, as I threw out the stat last night, 2010, the last time there was an AFC championship game, that did not include either the Patriots or the Chiefs.
Yeah.
Too much. Okay. And we'll save, I guess we discussed our Dolphin season record prognostications before, so let's not go there. Okay, the news of the day, I guess, would have to be Jaylen Ramsey, who again did not practice. We know now it's a hamstring injury. He's a different cat in terms of, again, he's a very, very skilled athlete. He knows the defense, very, very sharp guy. He may not need him as much prep time as they would another player in his position to be able to play. The bottom line, he hasn't practiced in more than 2 weeks. and now it's 2 DNPs on Wednesday and Thursday of week 1 of the regular season, and it's starting to smell like he ain't playing.
Yeah, you and I disagreed on this earlier today, saving players for later in the season. And I would be for Jaylen Ramsey making a reserved appearance, a limited appearance, a snap count type appearance in game 1 to ensure that he's also there for game 2. I think a little bit of Jaylen Ramsey is better than no Jaylen Ramsey. I think he had a quote during training camp, might have been to one of your questions, that like 70% of Jaylen Ramsey is better than 90% of the cornerbacks in the NFL, or whatever the quote was. And I believe that that's true. I think you're probably going to need Jaylen to some extent to win against Jacksonville. And you're definitely going to need him to beat Josh Allen and the Bills, the team that spanked you 13 of the last 15 and 4 of 5 under Mike McDaniel. So I would say, I would a little bit of Jaylen Ramsey on Sunday, just see how it goes. But to me, the bigger thing is I want Jaylen Ramsey for that Thursday night division game against the team that repeatedly spanks us. So that's kind of how I would approach it. Snap count, if necessary, on Sunday, and turn them loose on Thursday against Buffalo.
As much as he can be turned loose, is
right.
The question. And the thing is, to me, what worries me about this, we're dealing with a hamstring. And I'm old enough to have seen a lot of players who were dealing with going through puberty. I forget, I'm not old, I'm going through puberty. Seen guys dealing with hamstrings, and those things linger. Yeah. And sometimes they come back too soon, and boom, instead of being 2 weeks out, it's 5 weeks out. That's the last thing you want to see with Jaylen Ramsey, who's a guy who's a key to unlocking a lot of different things that Anthony Weaver could do with his scheme, because he's so versatile. Not only versatile, but versatile at a high level, unlike anybody else in that defense. So for me, it comes down to very simply, you talk to the doctors and have a very long, very open, very frank discussion. Okay, what are we looking at in terms of risk of aggravation? Is it strictly an issue of pain tolerance, if that's the case? But usually hammies, again, there's risk management to me. And it's not about the Buffalo game, even no matter how big it is. To me, it's, again, long haul. Would I like to see him in the lineup? Obviously. I mean, again, he's the most decorated player on that defense, 7-time Pro Bowl selection. So it'd be great to have him. Is it possible he plays? Sure. He could practice Friday for all we know, and then, be okay. But I would err on the side of caution in this particular instance.
Yeah, and look, to your point, I would probably think the Dolphins lean way more toward your camp. And look, there's 2 memories fresh in their mind, right? Apples to apples, Rob Hunt last year, hamstring. And then Connor Williams came back too soon and had to sit. In both cases, the Dolphins brought these players back too soon from their injury. I think Connor was that a knee or a groin? I can't remember. I think it was the groin, and the knee put him out for the season. But Rob Hunt is an apples to apples comparison, and you're now that I think about it, you're probably correct.
Whoa! Come on, what's this? What's the show on ESPN? Ding 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 ding.
Right.
There we go.
It doesn't. Right. It
doesn't
work. That's it.
Oh, love that.
I sit corrected. I'm now on your side.
And let's understand, it would completely suck to have to sit Jaylen Ramsey because, like it or not, there's going to be a major drop-off from Jaylen Ramsey to anybody else who lines up outside. No offense to anybody. And right now, probably we're thinking, based on what Anthony Weaver said, the first name he threw out was Ethan Bonner.
Yeah.
And Ethan Bonner's a great story and all that, and he's got loads of potential, but he's still a guy who doesn't have a ton of experience. And Jacksonville has some very good wide receivers. So, again, we'll have to see how that plays out. The good news when it comes to the injury was Aaron Brewer, who told the reporters in the locker room that he's good to go. Acknowledged he broke his hand doing a combination block in one of the joint practices with the Atlanta Falcons. Didn't know it was broken until he went back to try to snap, and it looked at us and we're like, oh, something's wrong here. But he said, like, good to go. Everything's solid. Solid was the key word in his little media session. So that's obviously good news.
That is, and I wasn't there for Brewer, but he's looked to be in good spirits when we've seen him in the locker room, and I don't know, if that matters at all anyway. But I've been a little more encouraged and upbeat about him the more that we've seen him. I guess last week and this week when he's out there, we see him out there in sweats. We see him out there doing things, unlike some other people. Like I guess OBJ. Well, OBJ is a bad comparison because he's on the PUP list. But but there I guess there have been other injured guys that we've seen that haven't been out there as much. But Aaron Brewer's workload and his intent seemed to increase in recent days. Like they were putting more and more on him. So yeah, I was a little more encouraged about Brewer than I was about some of the other guys.
And for those wondering, then now it becomes that your very highly likely starting offensive line for the Dolphins against Jacksonville on Sunday will be from left to right: Teron Armstead, Robert Jones, Aaron Brewer, Liam Eichenberg, and Austin Jackson. Yes, it'll be Eichenberg at right guard and not Lester Cotton, who they would go with. And which brings me to A, the level of confidence we can have in this line, and B, the question that our good buddy Adam Beasley asked of Frank Smith, basically, which was, you chose to replace or to replenish your offensive line with guys who were here last year. And Frank Smith's answer was basically, because we believe these guys all work hard and we believe they're going to improve.
I'm not mad at Frank Smith for that answer. I'm really not. Well, you know what? And I've told you this. I've come around to Chris Greer's side. I'm not worried about the offensive line. I think that story has been overplayed. You're solid at the two tackles. If Aaron Brewer is close to what you think he was, you're going to be solid at center. And the two guards, okay, well, you can't be strong at all 22 positions. And if you want to strengthen your guard position, you pick out the one or two positions you want to weaken. Safety, linebacker, edge rusher, tight end. It's the most two insignificant starting positions on the field. No disrespect to any guards out there, but if I have to be weak at any two starting positions, it's going to be left guard and right guard. So I'm sorry. I agree with the way the Dolphins are approaching this. I really do. After I've thought about it more, I don't like that they haven't prioritized center and the two guards, but at least they did go after Aaron Brewer, and they're going to be solid, you think, at center and the two tackle positions. Realistically, that's about all I can hope for, 80% of the offensive lines in the NFL.
And you have been very consistent in your position. I will give you props for that. So hat tip to you, Mr. Perkins. No, when I made a little bit of a face, it wasn't like, again, Frank Smith's not the GM. So basically asking him, why did you guys keep the same guys? I mean, technically he could say, well, that was Chris Greer's choice in conjunction with Mike McDaniel. So because I don't know exactly how much input Frank Smith would have in that decision. So, and yeah, there's some validity to suggesting players can improve from one year to another. Absolutely. There's some validity to suggesting that if it goes south with the offensive line at the wrong times, and a big part of the problem is the interior of the offensive line, then there are going to be some questions asked about why didn't you do better? And then we can hold off on that. And again, as I've said many times, to your point, this offense is structured where there's not necessarily a lot of, how can I put this politely, stress or heavy lifting required of the offensive line to the same level as other offenses.
Yep. And I'll tell you this, Poop, and for the viewers out there, we work the locker room and we take our job seriously. We do some homework. So I talked to Calais Campbell. I know. I'm speaking for myself then, all right? I talked to Calais Campbell because, through some very minor research, I found that he played for Ryan Nielsen last year, who is Jacksonville's defensive coordinator now. He was the defensive coordinator in Atlanta. Ryan Nielsen has a defensive line background. So I went to Calais and I said, what can we expect to see from Jacksonville, and he told me probably 70 to 80% twists and stunts, and not just involving the defensive line, also involving the linebackers. And so he was like, we've got to be ready for that. That this is how Ryan Nielsen has made his money. And we know that the defensive line is the strongest part of that Jacksonville defense, with Josh Hines Allen at one end, Trayvon Walker at the other end. We have not seen Eric Armstead yet, who came over from San Francisco. He had off-season surgery, I think shoulder surgery. But here's a guy who Calais was saying, look for Armstead on the inside on passing downs, and you're going to have that three-headed monster in there. So, this is what we do in the locker room. We build sources, we talk to players, we research, we get intel, and we pass it on to you on the podcast and in our stories. And so when we talk offensive line, and I did ask Frank Smith, I asked Frank Smith today about communication, and he was saying really it's still about teamwork and working together, as a unit with the offensive line. But I will say, after talking to Calais, I am a little more concerned about that interior offensive line, Poop. I'm not sure that they're man on man, just straight ahead blocking. Okay. When you get into twists and stunts and picking up guys and communicating, I think that's kind of a soft spot or a weakness for this line. So we will keep an eye on that.
Are you suggesting you're a little queasy?
A tiny bit.
By the way, I was just looking up, don't ask me why, but I was looking up some team coaching staffs today, and I found out, did you know this? Joe Philbin is now a senior offensive assistant with the Las Vegas Raiders. You knew that?
Oh, no, he's with the Raiders. He was with somebody else. You know what? I reached out to get in touch with Philbin last year. I think he was with another team. Cowboy, you know what? He was at Ohio State. That's where he was. He was like an offensive advisor for Ohio State. But now let's see. So he's back in the league. Interesting.
Yeah. No, and they have
work by you, Poop.
How about that?
I will tell you this. Nobody cares about this, but I always BS with Liam Eichenberg. I think he's a real good guy. Blah blah blah. How's your brother doing? And he was like, "Oh, he's good. I'm looking forward to him coming in here. His brother plays for the Raiders." And so I said, oh, that's right. And I said, so are your parents going to have that half Dolphins, half Raiders shirt? And he goes, yeah, of course. And he goes, my grandparents too. I've already bought the shirt for him. So yeah, and by the way, one other thing today, Tua was outstanding in the locker room. Outstanding. So we just BS'd with him. And for our viewers, Tua has been a very standoffish guy in the locker room. Sometimes usually the starting quarterback speaks once a week. He's on the podium, usually on Wednesday. And when you see him in the locker room, you kind of stay away unless you can kind of BS with a lot of these starting quarterbacks. Ryan Fitzpatrick was absolutely fantastic. We might have talked about this before. Ryan Tannehill was so-so. Matt Moore was fantastic. Jay Cutler, not so good. Brock Osweiler, not so good.
Pennington was good.
Yeah, who's?
Chad Pennington was good.
Yes, Pennington, excellent. Pennington, another excellent one. And Tua is getting better. Tua came in during COVID when locker rooms weren't open and, nobody was allowed in. But last year we talked to him briefly about, he was asking us, should he allow Hard Knocks into his house? Mm-hmm. And we had a great casual conversation with him. Today, he was just sitting there and I said, so Tua, who does Alabama have this week? And he was like, I don't know. And then it got into watching the game tonight, and it got into, are you going to let your kid play football and high school NIL money? And it was great. So Tua, this confidence thing goes beyond being on the field. Right. He's better with us. He's just more chill. He's more relaxed. I really like the new Tua, and just being able to BS with him in the locker room, casual. We were respectful of his time. We were only there for like 5 to 7 minutes, but he's smiling. He's engaging. He's talking back to us, asking us questions. He was giving Hal Habib crap today because we found out Alabama's playing South Florida. Hal told us, and Tua's asking Hal, so Hal, who do you think's going to win? And Hal is going, what do you mean who's going to win? And Tua is pressing Hal. Well, give us a team. And Hal keeps going, isn't it obvious? And give us a team, Hal. Give us a team. So Tua is really loose. He's having fun. I like this version of Tua. I don't know if it's going to lead to a victory on Sunday, but I like this version of Tua.
Yeah, and it goes with everything that he's got the new contract. He's older.
Yep.
He's a father of two.
Yep.
And that'll mature you very quickly, speaking from experience. And he got the new contract. It's Dolphins. I've told him that you're the guy. You're our guy. So all of that, I think there was him getting the contract extension lifted a whole whatever cloud was left from his early time with the Dolphins has completely gone away, and now it's bright sunshine over his head. So absolutely, yeah, and even in his press conferences, you see he is a lot less guarded. Not that he was always shy about expressing his opinions on certain things, but now it's like even more, going. There has been quite a transformation, and again, everything started with Mike McDaniel being hired as head coach. Excuse me, and basically taking on a whole new approach with him as opposed to what was going on before that with Brian Flores. But we digress because we
I went from offensive line.
Let's go back to the offensive line. And my question is, I asked Frank Smith, will Teron Armstead, having basically not practiced at all during training camp, have to work his way back into regular season form or into form, or is the fact that he's such a veteran and such a pro, it's going to make that a moot point? And Frank Smith was like, here's your question. It was like, it's not even an issue. He knows what he's doing. Not even a concern whatsoever. And
based on what we've seen the last couple of years, I can kind of agree with Frank Smith. We've seen Teron against from the veterans to to Aiden Hutchinson, right? The young whippersnapper. And Teron seems to do well against them with minimal practice. So I think it will take Teron time to get into football shape. I don't know if that's 2 games, 3 games, whatever, but I think the lack of practice, I have so much trust in Teron. I would have the same amount of trust in Jaylen Ramsey, except as you wisely point out, we're dealing with a soft tissue injury, a hamstring, and that's totally different than aches and pains from prolonged surgeries and playing as Teron. So although Teron's deal is I guess a bigger deal from year to year, and Jaylen's is kind of a week to week, I think you have to treat Jaylen's differently and probably more seriously.
And we should point out, and I'm going to put on my glasses here so I can see my monitor here, that Teron Armstead no longer is on the injury report.
Yep.
He was on the injury report on Wednesday with vet rest, DNP. Him and Calais Campbell were both in the same spot, so they're now off the injury report. In the quick rundown, Jaylen Ramsey did not practice. 3 players were limited. Aaron Brewer, but although we told you, he said he's good to go. Defensive tackle Benito Jones, who has a knee injury, was limited for a second consecutive day, and also limited for a second consecutive day was rookie wide receiver Malik Washington, who is dealing with a quadriceps injury. If it becomes significant enough to where the Dolphins might have to make him inactive on Sunday, remember they can always elevate one of the wide receivers from the practice squad, whether it be Eric Ezukama or Robbie Chosen. And along with Ramsey, if he doesn't play, we mentioned Ethan Bonner possibly, getting the start at outside cornerback. We also could see one of the cornerbacks getting elevated from the practice squad. I would imagine Nick Needham would be your guy there, given his experience. Other injury updates from Thursday, linebacker Quentin Bell, who has a thumb injury, was limited Wednesday. He was a full participant. Jalen Phillips, who did not work on Wednesday, worked full on Thursday. He's listed as ankle vet rest. Same full also for Jordan Poyer and Anthony Walker. So we're basically down to 4 guys, Ramsey and the 3 guys limited, even though, again, for the risk of repeating myself, Brewer says he's good to go. Jacksonville still has only the 1 guy, safety Daniel Thomas, with an Achilles injury, who again was limited. You mentioned Odell Beckham earlier. I don't know if you saw, we chronicled it on Miami Dolphins on SI.com. He posted a video on Instagram of himself working out with no necessarily, there was a little bit of a written message next to it. I don't remember what it was. There wasn't anything controversial, and he shot at his social media tormentor. Well, it's there. I mean, I'm not making it up. But gang, the guy's working. He wants to get back. First game eligible for him is the Week 5 game against the New England Patriots at Gillette Stadium. Same goes for Cameron Good, Isaiah Wynn, Bradley Chubb, River Craycraft, and Cam Smith, the two guys who are on IR, and Patrick McMorris, the rookie safety, who was put on post-53 IR.
Yep. I have nothing to add to that but this. I know. We did see Isaiah Wynn strolling through the locker room yesterday. He looked fine, right? No limp from the quadriceps or whatever. We really don't know specifically what's ailing him, but another guy who seemed to be in good spirits and upbeat for whatever that's worth.
Did he seem to be favoring his quad?
He did. He was walking fine. He was walking fine, and I believe had a plate of food and was about to throw down on some food. So he looked fine to me.
That is a very, very strange situation. So, in addition to Frank Smith talking, as we mentioned, special teams coordinator day. Danny Crossman, special teams coordinator, also talked. Anthony Weaver, the defensive coordinator, along with two assistants, linebackers coach Joe Brady, and tight ends coach, assistant head coach John Embry. Don't know that anything really necessarily stood out to me, other than I hate to be that guy. Just for those hoping to see a big role for Channing Tindall, when Joe Brady was asked to discuss the depth at linebacker, he basically proceeded to talk about Jordan Brooks, David Long Jr., Anthony Walker Jr., and Duke Riley, and how much he likes all of those guys, and that they provide them great depth.
Yep.
And it's like, I don't know about you, but I was like, Channing Tindall.
Yeah. And look, Joe Barry was very good in talking about his depth. I really like the depth at that position. It might be the deepest position on the team, but it's kind of an insignificant position to have depth, right? The inside, that's kind of like being deep at fullback nowadays.
Or the F position.
Right. Oh my goodness. I still don't know what that is.
It's kind of sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but it kind of sort of sounds like or resembles an H-back, if we're going to be honest about it.
That's a good observation by you. See, I'm glad you can educate me, Poop. That's very nice.
I try to educate every time a chance I get.
That's right. The one thing that we didn't ask Joe Barry is what is the role that these linebackers will have in defending Evan Ingram. And Evan Ingram, the Jags tight end, is a very valuable piece for them in the passing game. And shame on us, for not asking that. But that will be a big key to the defense. They're not on trial. To the defense here.
Maybe they will be, depending on how they play Sunday.
That's right. But the Evan Ingram matchup and how he's defended. Safeties will help, but the linebacker role that will be very interesting.
Can I make a suggestion to the Dolphins? If you're paying attention to this, don't put David Long Jr. on him. I like David Long Jr. a lot, but coverage not necessarily his forte. And Evan Ingram is a tough matchup to begin with. A couple of bookkeeping notes: the Dolphins released off-injured reserve with an injury settlement. Braylon Sanders and Wyatt Ray, 2 cuts when the roster was pared down to 53. Same as with Chris Brooks, they can sign with an team at any time. The rules say that they can return to the Dolphins. They have to sit out 3 games plus number of games corresponding to the amount of the settlement. But again, and actually major props, and I apologize to the gentleman who pointed that out to me on Twitter, because I made the point of the comment here on a previous podcast episode that I never recalled somebody getting an injury settlement and then re-signing with the Dolphins the same year. And he pointed out, and I verified it, Oronde Gadsden in 2003 had an injury settlement. I think it might have been like September or October, and it was re-signed very late in the season.
Wow.
How about that, right?
Man, that is great memory. That is, incredible. Props to that guy.
Absolutely. And again, I apologize. My bad. I didn't think I was going to bring it up on the show. Otherwise, I would have looked up at the tweet that I got. But major props to you, sir. Hat tip, as I gave on Twitter when that came up. And then we're going to wrap this up with this. And your take, I don't know that there's a take to be had, but very interesting to me that as all the national media, NFL analysts put out their preseason projections, it's kind of all over the place for the Dolphins, in terms of whether they make the playoffs, whether they don't make the playoffs. They're not as solid as, like, for example, everybody has KC, Baltimore, Cincinnati more often than not is picked to make the playoffs. Houston, and then you have certain teams that are, depending on who you talk to, it's the Jets are one of those teams. Miami's one of those teams. Cleveland is one of those teams. Jacksonville is one of those teams. So, no, there's really not a consensus. I do think everybody agrees. I don't know that anybody, for those who have predicted records, I don't think I've ever seen anybody pick a losing record for the Dolphins. So that's a pretty good starting point.
I will say there is this I shouldn't say this doesn't matter. There is a photographer, cameraman who picks the Dolphins at 7-10. However, I found this out today. I sit next to Barry Jackson in the media workroom. We're talking blah, blah, blah. And Barry told me that he, on the Dolphins podcast, on his publications podcast, which I won't mention, you probably know. How about that? How about that for shading somebody?
On this paywall protected website.
I can't throw shade on that because mine is too.
Yeah,
but he told me that he raised the possibility of the Dolphins finishing 7-10. That he thinks that injuries could sidetrack this team. And I was like, boy, even with injuries, I don't see 7-10 as being realistic. I mean, they went 9-8 2 years ago. They went 11-6 last year. 7-10 would just be disastrous, even with a major injury wave. So, not trying to promote anybody else's podcast, but I'm putting that out there. 7-10 has been mentioned by a prominent local journalist.
That's funny. We encourage everybody to watch all the podcasts. Even Perks. I kid. I love you, buddy. In fact, this is an order. Check out the Dolphins Deep Dive with Perk. Which runs usually on Tuesdays. What are you guys doing next week, considering that there is no quote-unquote Tuesday because of the Thursday night game?
This was a long email chain between a bunch of people at the Sun Sentinel where me and Dave Hyde are doing Tuesday at noon. David Feronas will be at practice alone.
Okay, there you go.
So we think it's more important to be consistent with the podcast time as we try to build the audience. People will know Tuesday at noon, sunsentinel.com, rain or shine, whatever. So that's what we're doing.
Okay. And Tuesday is usually the day I do Behind Enemy Lines, as I did this week with John Shipley, longtime Jaguars reporter. I've already got my guest lined up for next week to talk Bills, but I have to see what his media schedule is going to be, and it may be that we tape it Monday night since the Bills play on Sunday afternoon against Arizona at 1 p.m. And then it'll air Tuesday, early posted Tuesday at some point. But we'll see. We will get it done. We will do our thing just like Perk's going to do our thing like he continues to do at sunsentinel.com, columns for the South Florida Sun Sentinel, the podcast. Catch my work on Miami Dolphins on SI.com. Obviously, you know where the podcast is since you're here. And on that brilliant note, we're going to wrap this up and thank everybody for watching. And as always, please like, subscribe, share all that good stuff. And we will catch you guys on Friday. Thanks, everyone.